You've been told to believe in one God. You've been taught that this God watches over you, judges your actions, and will ultimately decide whether you ascend to heaven or fall into damnation. But what if I told you that long before the belief in this one God, there was another tradition, one that spoke of a plurality of gods? These gods, known as the Anunnaki, were not spiritual entities, but an advanced extraterrestrial race. A race that colonized our planet thousands of years before humans even existed. This idea may seem extremely absurd. However, there are several pieces of evidence that point to the truth of this argument. In this video, we will find the historical evolution of the concept of belief in a single God, to uncover who or what human beings have worshipped since the most ancient times. This is how we will discover that God is an extraterrestrial. In order to understand the concept of God, we need to start from a historical, social, cultural, and theological foundation. In this sense, everything begins with Judaism. The evolution of the concept of divinity in early Hebrew tradition is more complex than the monotheistic framework we associate with Judaism today. Initially, Hebrew religion was defined by henotheism, a belief in the worship of one God without denying the existence of others. This framework is crucial for understanding how Yahweh came to dominate the religious landscape of ancient Israel, a transition that involved both theological and cultural shifts over time. In the earliest phases of Hebrew belief, the god El occupied a prominent position. El, a title for divinity across several Semitic cultures, including Canaanite, Hittite, Ugaritic, and Aramaic traditions, was often referred to as the God or the High God, a figure connected to creation and the authority of the pantheon. He was described as the father of gods and humanity, embodying a role of immense power. In the Hebrew Bible, El appears in various forms, such as El Shaddai, that can be translated as God Almighty, and El Elyon, meaning God Most High, both of which indicate his supremacy in the early religious landscape. For example, in Genesis, Abraham received a blessing from Melchizedek, the priest king of Salem, in the name of El Elyon, highlighting the integration of El into Israelite worship. The name Israel itself derives from an encounter between Jacob and God, where Jacob is renamed Israel, meaning one who struggles with God, further indicating the importance of El in early Hebrew religious identity. As the patriarchal tradition developed, the followers of this high God became known as Israelites, although their religious practices remained influenced by the surrounding Canaanite and Mesopotamian cultures, which recognized multiple deities. Yahweh's origins, by contrast, are distinct from El's. Initially, Yahweh appears to have been a local deity associated with the southern regions of Edom or Midian, potentially revered as a storm or war god by nomadic tribes. The earliest known mention of Yahweh may come from a recently discovered lead curse tablet at Mount Ebal, dated to between 1400 and 1200 BCE. This tablet, found through a process of wet-sifting excavation debris, contains an inscription in proto-alphabetic characters that reads, "Cursed by Yahweh." Mount Ebal is notable for being associated with a biblical altar site linked to Joshua. This discovery could push back the date of Yahweh's veneration among ancient Israelites, reinforcing the idea that Yahweh was worshipped in the early stages of their settlement in Canaan. Additionally, another ancient inscription mentioning Yahweh comes from the time of Pharaoh Amenhotep III, circa 1400 BCE. Found at the Soleb Temple in modern-day Sudan, this inscription refers to a group called the Shasu of Yahweh, likely a nomadic group connected to early Israelites. This suggests that Yahweh was already being worshipped by certain groups long before he rose to prominence in the Hebrew tradition. The key moment for Yahweh's elevation occurs in the biblical story of Moses. When Moses encountered a divine presence in the burning bush on Mount Sinai, the deity revealed himself as the letters YHWH, or I am who I am, Exodus 3:14, a name that signifies self-existence and divine sovereignty. Yahweh, derived from this tetragrammaton, represented a God who acted decisively in the world, particularly in the liberation of the Israelites from Egyptian slavery. His intervention in human affairs marked a shift in his role, from a tribal god of a specific group to the national God of Israel. As the Israelites transitioned from a tribal confederation to a more centralized kingdom, Yahweh's prominence grew. The period of the Judges and the early monarchy, as described in the books of Joshua and Judges, reflects a time when Israelite religion was still flexible, with various local cults and deities coexisting alongside Yahweh. However, under kings like David and Solomon, Yahweh's centrality was cemented. Solomon's construction of the first temple in Jerusalem symbolized this consolidation of religious power, with the Ark of the Covenant, Yahweh's throne, placed in the Holy of Holies, the inner sanctum of the temple. By the time of King Josiah from 640 to 609 BCE, Yahweh had become the sole God of Israel. Josiah's religious reforms were pivotal, as he sought to eliminate local religious practices and centralize worship in Jerusalem. It is during this period that the Shema, found in Deuteronomy 6:4, became a central prayer. Hear, O Israel, Yahweh is our God, Yahweh is one. This prayer symbolized the final shift toward monotheism, wherein Yahweh was not only the God of Israel, but the one true God of all creation, distinct from the gods of other nations. However, this was only the beginning of Yahweh's transformation. Although Judaism firmly established Yahweh as the one true God, its monotheism remained closely tied to the identity of Israel. With the eventual rise of Christianity, a decisive turn toward strict monotheism took place, expanding Yahweh's influence beyond the Israelites. As Christianity emerged from its Jewish roots, it inherited Yahweh as the one true God, but reframed his role to encompass a broader universal scope, transcending his earlier, more exclusive association. The rise of Christianity brought about a profound transformation in the figure of Yahweh. In Judaism, Yahweh was the singular God of the Israelites, a deity known for his demands of loyalty, obedience, and the occasional display of wrath against his people when they strayed. However, as Christianity spread, Yahweh's role evolved. He transformed from the exclusive God of a single nation into a universal deity, the God of all humanity. This evolution was not merely theological, but also shaped by the cultural, political, and religious forces of the time. Christianity emerged within the context of the Roman Empire, a melting pot of diverse beliefs, philosophies, and traditions. Early Christians faced the challenge of distinguishing their faith from both Judaism and the pagan religions that dominated Roman society. This led to a synthesis of ideas where Yahweh, now referred to as God the Father, took on a more expansive and inclusive role. Christianity absorbed elements from surrounding Greco-Roman thought and earlier traditions, blending them into a broader vision of a universal deity. In the Greco-Roman world, gods like Zeus, Jupiter, and other supreme deities were considered rulers of a larger pantheon of gods, and often seen as governing the entire cosmos. Similarly, older Near Eastern traditions, like the Sumerian worship of Anu and the Egyptian reverence for Ra, also held the notion of a high god with control over other deities. As Christianity spread throughout the Roman Empire, Yahweh, influenced by these ideas, was no longer seen as a regional god bound to Israel. He became the universal creator, the ruler of all existence, akin to the supreme gods in these other traditions. At the heart of this transformation was the figure of Jesus Christ. While the Old Testament depicted Yahweh's direct relationship with the Israelites, the New Testament introduced Jesus as the Son of God, sent to offer salvation not only to the Jews, but to all of humanity. This marked a critical shift in the understanding of God's role. Jesus' life, death, and resurrection were central to this new interpretation, positioning him as the bridge between humanity and the divine. His miracles, healing the sick, raising the dead, and even his ascension into heaven were seen as signs of divine power. But some modern theorists, especially those aligned with ancient astronaut theories, propose that these miraculous events could be reinterpreted as advanced technological feats, potentially influenced by extraterrestrial beings. For example, the ascension of Jesus into heaven could be seen as an event resembling extraterrestrial transport, rather than a purely supernatural occurrence. This idea of Jesus as a divine-human hybrid has intrigued many, especially when considered alongside other ancient stories. The Sumerian Anunnaki, for example, were believed to have created and guided humanity using advanced knowledge and technology. Similarly, some ancient astronaut theorists suggest that Jesus' miracles might have been manifestations of advanced medical or scientific knowledge, perhaps handed down by beings from beyond Earth. This perspective invites the possibility that the early Christian narrative of divine intervention might hold echoes of encounters with beings from other realms. In the context of early Christianity, the Greco-Roman world also played a significant role in shaping the theological concepts surrounding Yahweh. The idea of a god coming to earth in human form was not unfamiliar to the Greeks and Romans, who had stories of deities like Zeus and Apollo interacting with mortals. The Christian narrative of God manifesting in Jesus resonated with these traditions, allowing the new faith to appeal to a wider audience in the Roman Empire. This synthesis of Jewish, Greco-Roman, and even older traditions helped position Yahweh as a universal God, one who transcended national or ethnic boundaries. The Apostle Paul played a pivotal role in this shift. Initially a Pharisee opposed to the early Christian movement, Paul's dramatic conversion to Christianity led him to become one of the most influential figures in the spread of the faith. He argued that Christ existed before creation, identifying him as the divine Logos, the Word, through whom God created the universe. In Paul's letters, particularly in Philippians 2, he presents Christ as equal to Yahweh, worthy of worship, and the ultimate manifestation of God on earth. This idea of Christ as pre-existent and co-equal with God was revolutionary, drawing on both Jewish monotheism and Greek philosophical concepts of divine logos, thus helping Christianity evolve into a religion with universal claims. As Christianity spread, Yahweh's transformation continued. No longer was he just the God of the Israelites, he was now the God of all nations, the creator and ruler of the entire universe. This shift from a regional deity to a universal God mirrors other ancient consolidations of power, where one God rises from a pantheon to become supreme. For instance, in Babylon, Marduk's ascension as the chief deity, or in Egypt, Amun-Ra's dominance over other gods reflect similar processes. In Christianity, this universalization of Yahweh culminated in the development of the doctrine of the Trinity, formulated in the Council of Nicaea in 325 CE. This doctrine described God as one being in three persons, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, resolving the tension between the Jewish tradition of monotheism and the Christian worship of Jesus as divine. The Council of Nicaea, convened by Emperor Constantine, was a critical moment in solidifying the universal scope of Yahweh's power. The debates at Nicaea centered on the nature of Christ's relationship to God. Was he a created being, as Arius argued, or was he of the same substance as God, as the council ultimately declared? The conclusion that Christ was of one substance with the Father solidified the Christian understanding of Yahweh as a universal God, shared across cultures, geographies, and peoples. The transformation of Yahweh into the Christian God also incorporated influences from older traditions. The use of logos to describe Christ drew from Greek philosophical thought, particularly the idea of a rational divine force that ordered the cosmos. The concept of a savior deity who sacrifices himself for the good of humanity also had precedence in various ancient mythologies. As Christianity absorbed these elements, it allowed Yahweh to transcend his origins as a national God and become the universal creator and ruler of all. This merging of philosophical and mythological concepts into Christianity illustrates how religious traditions evolve through the integration of external influences. However, this is not a unique phenomenon. Another monotheistic tradition, Islam, also emerged with its distinct understanding of the divine, demonstrating the diverse ways in which the concept of a singular, all-powerful deity can be expressed. In Islam, Allah is the omnipotent, omniscient, and singular deity, the creator and sustainer of all that exists. The concept of Allah as the one and only God, encapsulated in the doctrine of Tawhid, absolute oneness, forms the core of Islamic theology. The Quran describes Allah as eternal, without beginning or end, incomparable and transcendent, beyond the confines of space, time, and human comprehension. These attributes paint a portrait of a being who exists outside the physical realm, overseeing all things yet not bound by them. While Islam shares its monotheistic roots with Judaism and Christianity, recognizing God as the same deity worshipped by figures such as Abraham, Moses, and Jesus, it refines the concept of monotheism into a more absolute form. Unlike Christianity, which includes the doctrine of the Trinity and the belief in Jesus as a divine incarnation, Islam strictly rejects any notion of divine plurality. In this sense, Tawhid in Islam rejects the possibility of Allah having any partners, offspring, or associates, marking a clear theological distinction from the Christian understanding of God. One of the core beliefs in Islam is that Allah is both transcendent and immanent. This means that while Allah is entirely beyond the world, He is also intimately involved in the lives of His creation. The Quran, which Muslims regard as the literal word of God revealed to the Prophet Muhammad, paints a picture of a God who is omnipresent, omniscient, and omnipotent. In Surat al-Ikhlas, for instance, the Quran succinctly states, "Say, He is Allah, the one and only, Allah the eternal, absolute. He begets not, nor is He begotten, and there is none like unto Him." Quran 112, 1-4. This surah captures the essence of Tawhid and the fundamental nature of Allah as beyond comparison, not subject to any human or physical limitations. The concept of Tanzi in Islamic theology, which emphasizes Allah's complete transcendence, further underlines His uniqueness. This doctrine rejects any anthropomorphism, affirming that Allah cannot be imagined or represented in any form. He is free from the limitations of space, time, or corporeality. The Quran explicitly states, "There is nothing whatever like unto Him, and He is the all-hearing, the all-seeing." Quran 42:11, reinforcing the idea that Allah's nature is beyond human understanding and cannot be compared to His creation in any way. In Islam, Allah's oneness and sovereignty over the universe are inseparable. He is not just the creator, but also the sustainer of all things. The Quran describes Allah as the one who created the heavens and the earth and all that is between them. Quran 25:2, stressing his absolute control and knowledge of the entire universe. The Quran also highlights that everything in the cosmos submits to his will, and humans are called to live in submission to his divine plan, which is the very meaning of Islam, submission to God. Islamic monotheism also stands in contrast to certain interpretations found in earlier Abrahamic traditions. While Judaism shares a strict monotheism, the Christian understanding of God, particularly the doctrine of the Trinity, is seen in Islam as a form of associating partners with God, known as shirk, which Islam considers the gravest of sins. The Quran frequently critiques the notion of divine plurality, particularly addressing Christians with verses such as, "They do blaspheme who say, 'Allah is Christ, the Son of Mary.' But said Christ, 'O children of Israel, worship Allah, my Lord and your Lord.'" Quran 5:72. This critique is part of the Quran's broader effort to reaffirm a pure, undivided conception of the divine, as embodied in the doctrine of Tawhid. Beyond his transcendence, Allah's immanence is also significant in Islam. The Quran speaks of Allah's closeness to his creation, stating that he is closer to man than his jugular vein. Quran 50:16. This conveys that while Allah is beyond human comprehension, he is also deeply involved in the affairs of the world, constantly aware of and guiding the lives of his creation. Islamic spirituality, especially in the mystical tradition of Sufism, emphasizes this intimate relationship between the believer and Allah, where the ultimate goal is to seek nearness to the divine. The Quran also rejects any form of divine intermediaries, a position that further strengthens the concept of Tawhid. While angels, prophets, and messengers play critical roles in delivering Allah's guidance to humanity, none of them share in his divinity. The angel Gabriel, Jibril, for instance, is believed to have revealed the Quran to the Prophet Muhammad. But Gabriel is not seen as a divine being, only as a servant of Allah. The Quranic narrative consistently maintains that all messengers, whether angelic or human, act solely under the will of Allah and do not possess independent authority or divinity. Islamic theology revolves around the central belief in Allah's absolute oneness, his transcendence, and his immanence. The idea of Tawhid shapes every aspect of Muslim life, from worship practices to ethical conduct, grounding the believer's relationship with the divine in a profound recognition of Allah's ultimate authority, uniqueness, and incomparability. Interestingly, the notion of divine authority transcends cultural and historical boundaries. Before the rise of monotheism, ancient civilizations anchored their understanding of leadership in the heavens. They believed that their rulers and leaders were chosen by the gods, with authority passed down directly from the divine. In Sumer, the earliest known civilization, the belief was that kingship descended from heaven. This phrase, recorded in Sumerian texts, suggests that leadership and power were not merely human constructs, but were handed down from divine beings, specifically the Anunnaki, gods worshipped as powerful figures who controlled all aspects of life and were thought to have descended from the stars, governing human societies and shaping the early course of civilization. The Anunnaki were believed to have established the foundations of human society by teaching early humans the necessary skills for agriculture, governance, and city building. If we look deeper into Sumerian mythology and texts, such as the Sumerian King List and other ancient records, we find a recurring theme: that all knowledge, technology, and the very structure of society itself came from the gods. What if these gods were not simply mythical figures? Could they have been extraterrestrial overseers who descended to Earth and directed the course of human development? The massive ziggurats that dominated the cityscapes of ancient Sumer were believed to be the dwelling places of the gods on Earth. These towering structures, resembling step pyramids, were built to honor the gods, acting as both temples and seats of power for rulers who were seen as intermediaries between the divine and mortal realms. Some theories suggest that they may have served a much larger purpose, as stations for extraterrestrial contact. The Sumerians, like many other ancient civilizations, built their temples and monuments in alignment with the stars, suggesting an intimate connection between their gods and the cosmos. Could the ziggurats have been constructed as landing sites or communication hubs for the Anunnaki, who were said to have come from beyond the earth? Zecharia Sitchin's interpretation of Sumerian texts brings forth a compelling theory that the Anunnaki were extraterrestrial beings who arrived on Earth from the distant planet Nibiru. According to Sitchin, the Anunnaki colonized Earth thousands of years ago, seeking precious resources, most notably gold. This gold, Sitchin proposed, was necessary for the Anunnaki's advanced technology, possibly to sustain their planet's atmosphere by dispersing finely powdered gold particles to reflect solar radiation and stabilize the environment. The fascination with gold and silver is a recurring theme in many ancient cultures, from Sumer to Egypt, and even within the biblical traditions. This obsession with precious metals goes beyond their mere aesthetic or monetary value. It seems to hold a deeper, almost sacred significance for both gods and humans alike. When examined through the lens of ancient astronaut theory, the story of these metals takes on an entirely new meaning, especially considering the role of the Anunnaki and their interactions with early human civilizations. To accomplish the massive task of extracting gold from Earth, the Anunnaki needed a labor force. Sitchin's theory posits that humanity was created directly for this purpose. The Anunnaki genetically engineered early humans, modifying existing hominid species to create a workforce capable of mining Earth's resources. Essentially, humanity was designed to serve as laborers, created to toil in the mines and provide the Anunnaki with the gold they required. This idea of humanity being created for the purpose of labor, particularly mining, is supported by Sumerian myths like the Epic of Atrahasis, which describes the gods becoming weary of their own toil and creating humans to relieve them of their burden. This narrative closely mirrors Sitchin's hypothesis, where the Anunnaki, after growing tired of their own labor, decided to create a race of intelligent beings to carry out the demanding work of mining. The gold mines of southern Africa, some of the oldest known mining sites in the world, have been linked to this theory, suggesting that the Anunnaki may have established early mining operations in these regions. Gold and silver seem to have been highly valued by the gods in many ancient traditions. The Bible itself contains numerous references to these metals, often associating them with divine authority and wealth. In the book of Haggai, for example, Yahweh declares, "The silver is mine and the gold is mine." This proclamation by the God of Israel can be seen as an echo of older traditions, where gods claimed dominion over precious resources. In Sumerian and Mesopotamian myths, gold was often associated with immortality and the divine. It was believed that the gods were not only fascinated with gold, but needed it for reasons beyond human understanding. If we follow the trail of ancient stories and texts, it becomes apparent that the reverence for gold and silver spans multiple cultures and religious traditions. The Egyptians believed that their gods had flesh of gold, and that gold was the skin of the gods, signifying its divine and eternal properties. The Inca referred to gold as the sweat of the sun, further emphasizing its heavenly origins. Similarly, in Mesoamerican cultures, gold was believed to be the material of the gods and was used in rituals to honor them. This consistent association of precious metals with divinity suggests that there was something about these materials that connected them to the gods, possibly indicating their extraterrestrial importance. The Bible's frequent mention of gold and silver as symbols of divine favor and wealth may be more than just metaphorical. These references could be lingering remnants of a much older tradition that predates the monotheistic religions of the Middle East. In this view, biblical references to the preciousness of these metals might actually be echoes of Sumerian and Mesopotamian traditions where the gods, like the Anunnaki, required gold and silver for very practical and perhaps technological reasons. As these older traditions were absorbed and reinterpreted by the emerging monotheistic faiths, the original significance of the metals may have been obscured, but the reverence for them remained. Gold's unique properties, such as its resistance to corrosion and its ability to conduct electricity, make it an incredibly useful material, not just for adornment, but for advanced technological applications. Modern science has even explored the possibility of using gold particles in space exploration, hinting that the metal's true value could extend far beyond human understanding. If the Anunnaki were indeed extraterrestrial beings, they might have valued gold not only for its beauty, but for its potential uses in their technology, such as nanotechnology, energy conduction, or atmospheric stabilization. Similarly, silver has been prized not only for its luster, but for its antimicrobial properties. In many ancient cultures, silver was considered a purifying agent, often used in religious rituals and healing practices. Could the gods' obsession with silver also have a scientific basis, possibly related to its medicinal uses or technological applications? In the hands of the Anunnaki, silver might have been more than a symbol of wealth. It could have been a crucial material in their scientific endeavors, something they imparted to early humans along with their knowledge of its value. Sitchin's theory suggests that the creation of humanity was not a divine act in the spiritual sense, but rather a scientific process of genetic manipulation. The Anunnaki, with their advanced technological knowledge, supposedly engineered early humans, blending their own extraterrestrial DNA with that of Earth's native hominids. This genetic manipulation created Homo sapiens, intelligent beings capable of hard labor and servitude, yet also possessing the potential for growth, creativity, and development. This creation process is echoed in Sumerian texts, such as the Epic of Atrahasis, where the gods, tired of their own labor, decide to create humans to serve them. In this story, humanity is created from clay, combined with the blood of a slain god. However, if we reinterpret this ancient narrative through the lens of extraterrestrial influence, it suggests a literal scientific procedure, one where the genetic material of the gods, the Anunnaki, was combined with that of the Earth's native species to form a new race. The clay could represent the Earth-based genetic material, and the blood of the god could symbolize the Anunnaki's extraterrestrial DNA. It is important to clarify that myths demonstrate a crucial point where the entire history of the relationship between humans and the gods is altered. Initially created to work for the gods, humans began to be respected and cared for after surviving the flood, which is mentioned not only in the Bible and Mesopotamian mythology, but also in various mythologies around the world. By viewing these ancient myths as potential historical accounts of extraterrestrial intervention, it becomes clearer why the Sumerians believed that all their knowledge and societal structures were given to them by the gods. The Anunnaki didn't just create humans, they taught them. They passed down knowledge of agriculture, mathematics, astronomy, architecture, and more, allowing human civilization to flourish. This divine transmission of knowledge was most evident in Sumer, often hailed as the cradle of civilization. It represents humanity's first great leap into organized society, where city-states flourished, laws were codified, and the earliest forms of writing emerged. Located in the fertile plains of southern Mesopotamia, Sumer birthed not only complex administrative systems, but also laid the foundations for art, literature, and religion that would echo through the centuries. But what makes Sumer particularly intriguing is how deeply intertwined its development was with its religious beliefs, especially the idea that all knowledge and authority came directly from the gods, specifically the Anunnaki. The Sumerians attributed their advancements in agriculture, architecture, writing, and governance to the teachings of their gods. The Anunnaki were believed to have descended from the heavens, imparting their wisdom to humanity and structuring Sumerian life according to divine laws. Everything in Sumerian society, from the ruling kings to the layout of their cities, was viewed as a reflection of the will of these celestial beings. The Sumerian King List emphasizes that kingship itself descended from heaven, suggesting that the authority to rule came directly from the Anunnaki. This divine endorsement gave Sumerian kings not just political power, but also religious legitimacy. One of the earliest kings mentioned in Sumerian records is Alulim, who ruled in the city of Eridu, the first city of Sumer, which was also believed to be the birthplace of civilization. According to the myths, Alulim ruled for thousands of years, a lifespan far beyond what is humanly possible. This has led some theorists to propose that Alulim and other early kings were not purely human, but perhaps direct descendants of the Anunnaki, or even hybrids, part human, part extraterrestrial. In ancient Sumerian society, the concept of divine governance was deeply integrated into every aspect of life. Central to this system were the towering ziggurats that dominated the skyline of every major Sumerian city. These massive, multi-tiered edifices were believed to be the earthly homes of the gods. However, these structures were more than just temples. They symbolized the political and religious order of the city-states. Each city-state was governed by a political religious leader, known as an Ensi or Patesi, who was chosen by the city's god. This leader acted as the vice-regent on earth, representing the will of the god, whether referred to as Dingir, Ilum, or El within the Sumerian pantheon. The Ensi, Patesi, or sometimes referred to as Lugal, held immense power, both in governance and religious practices. Many scholars suggest that the terms Ensi, Patesi, and Lugal were functionally interchangeable, as they all served the role of leading their city-states under the god's command. In ancient texts, it is said that kingship itself descended from the heavens. Initially, the gods ruled directly, but as human societies developed, they established these vice-regents to act on their behalf. This divine connection legitimized the authority of these rulers and eventually paved the way for the aristocracy. The priestly class also emerged, with only a select few granted access to communicate directly with the gods, who were believed to reside in the ziggurats. Beyond their role as religious centers, ziggurats could have served a more technological purpose, according to some researchers. There is speculation that these massive structures may have been landing sites or communication hubs for the Anunnaki, the celestial beings believed to have originated from otherworldly realms. These ziggurats, designed to maintain contact with celestial bodies, seem to echo the cosmic origins of the Anunnaki themselves, suggesting that the interaction between gods and humans went beyond mere spiritual guidance. Throughout history, the belief that gods descended from the heavens has been a core element in the mythologies of civilizations across the world. From the earliest societies to the great empires that spanned continents, the idea of celestial beings coming to Earth and interacting with humanity is a recurring theme. These gods were often described as possessing immense power, wisdom, and sometimes even technology beyond human comprehension. When we explore these myths from different cultures, we begin to notice striking similarities, suggesting that they might all share a common origin. Could these stories, passed down through generations, be more than just imaginative tales? Could they represent recollections of actual extraterrestrial visitations? Moments when beings from the stars interacted with ancient humans? In Greek mythology, the gods were believed to live on Mount Olympus, high above the clouds, where they ruled over the world and occasionally descended to Earth to intervene in human affairs. Zeus, the king of the gods, was known for coming down from Olympus to engage with humans, often disguising himself to accomplish his divine missions. One of the most famous myths involves Zeus descending to Earth in the form of a bull to abduct Europa, a Phoenician princess. This act of divine intervention highlights a recurring theme. The gods had the power to move between their celestial realms and the Earth, interacting directly with humans when it suited their purposes. But what if these stories were not just symbolic or metaphorical? If we interpret these myths through the lens of extraterrestrial contact, Zeus's descents from Olympus could be seen as actual visits from advanced beings, whose appearance and actions were misunderstood by early humans. Similarly, in Norse mythology, the gods of Asgard frequently interacted with the human realm, known as Midgard. The Bifrost, a rainbow bridge that connected Asgard to Earth, was a means of passage between the two worlds. Thor, the thunder god, was often depicted as traveling between Asgard and Midgard, wielding his mighty hammer Mjolnir to protect humans and battle giants. Thor's descents from Asgard were not just spiritual journeys, they were physical interventions where he used his divine power to shape human events. In the context of ancient astronaut theory, the Bifrost might be reinterpreted as a symbol for advanced technology, perhaps a form of transport or energy system that allowed these beings to traverse dimensions or vast distances. Thor's hammer, which always returned to him no matter how far it was thrown, could be seen as a type of advanced weaponry or tool beyond human understanding at the time. Mesoamerican civilizations also held deeply ingrained beliefs in gods who came from the heavens. In Maya and Aztec mythology, the gods were closely associated with the stars, planets, and other celestial bodies. The Maya believed that their gods resided in the heavens and descended to Earth to impart knowledge, such as the intricacies of agriculture and timekeeping. Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent god of the Aztecs, was said to have descended from the stars to bring wisdom and civilization to humanity. Quetzalcoatl's role as a civilizing god is reminiscent of the Sumerian Anunnaki, who also imparted knowledge and technology to early humans. Some theorists propose that Quetzalcoatl's serpentine form could be a metaphor for space travel or an extraterrestrial figure, described through the lens of ancient understanding. His teachings and mysterious departure, where he is said to have sailed off into the sky, promising to return, echo similar tales of gods who left Earth but vowed to return someday. These themes are not confined to any one region. Across the world, from ancient Egypt to India and beyond, the idea of gods descending from the heavens is remarkably consistent. In Egypt, the pharaohs were considered living gods, direct descendants of the deities who came from the stars. The pyramids, aligned with celestial bodies, were seen as not only tombs, but also gateways through which the pharaohs would ascend to join their ancestors in the stars. Ra, the sun god, was believed to travel across the sky in his solar bark, descending each night into the underworld only to rise again. This cycle of descent and ascent mirrors the movement of gods between realms, suggesting a divine connection between the earth and the heavens. Could the solar bark of Ra be interpreted as a spacecraft, a vessel that allowed the gods to travel between their celestial domain and Earth? In India, the Vedic texts describe flying chariots, or vimanas, used by the gods to traverse the skies and even engage in battles. These descriptions often include detailed accounts of how the vimanas were built and operated, leading some to believe that they were not merely mythological symbols, but rather depictions of advanced flying machines. The gods of the Vedic tradition, like Indra and Agni, were frequently described as descending to earth in their chariots, interacting with humans, and wielding weapons of immense power. The Mahabharata, one of the great epics of Indian mythology, recounts numerous instances where gods intervene in human affairs, often from the sky, using technology that seems far beyond the reach of ancient human capability. Across all of these cultures, the common thread remains. Gods from the heavens descend to earth, bringing with them knowledge, technology, and sometimes destruction. But why is this theme so pervasive? One possible explanation is that these myths are cultural memories of extraterrestrial contact. Early humans, unable to fully comprehend the technology and abilities of these celestial visitors, interpreted their actions as divine. The advanced technology used by these beings, whether it be flying vimanas, Thor's hammer, or Zeus's lightning bolts, would have seemed like magic or supernatural power to the ancient peoples, leading to the formation of myths and legends. The similarities between these myths, despite the vast distances between the civilizations that created them, suggest that the idea of gods descending from the sky is not a coincidence. These myths may all be reflecting a shared human experience, one in which extraterrestrial beings interacted with early civilizations, guiding them, teaching them, and sometimes even ruling them. Whether through the Anunnaki, Zeus, Thor, or Quetzalcoatl, these gods left a lasting imprint on human history, shaping the course of civilizations and embedding themselves in the spiritual and cultural consciousness of the ancient world. The parallels between these stories and the later beliefs of other civilizations are difficult to ignore. Across cultures, the gods descended from the heavens, wielding powers that humans could barely comprehend. These gods, identified as the Anunnaki in Akkadian culture and the Anunna in Sumerian, were considered the creators of humanity. The Anunnaki, or offspring of Anu, represented a higher class of gods, referred to as Dingir in Sumerian and Elum in Akkadian, a term that evolved into Ilu and El in Hebrew. El, the high god, was worshipped across Semitic cultures and was believed to be the father of humanity, often associated with Anu, the supreme god of the Sumerian and Akkadian pantheons. Anu, known as An in Sumer, paralleled other sky father deities such as Zeus in Greek mythology and Odin in Norse mythology. Thus, we can observe a clear and precise timeline of events that involve our past. The extraterrestrials, known as the Anunnaki, descended from the heavens and established cities. In Mesopotamian mythology, the Igigi, a lower class of gods, protested against their labor, which led the Anunnaki to create humans as their labor force, made in their image and likeness. After the flood, as recounted in ancient texts like the Atrahasis and Epic of Gilgamesh, the gods changed their relationship with humans, teaching them how to build civilization. These gods remained on Earth alongside humanity for some time. Later, according to Greek, Norse, and other mythologies, the gods ascended to the heavens, lived in the skies, and occasionally descended to Earth. But did this culminate in the revelation of a singular creator god, as claimed by the monotheistic religions? The answer is more complex. The early Hebrew belief system, as with many ancient traditions, practiced henotheism, acknowledging the existence of other gods while focusing on the worship of Yahweh. Yahweh, initially a local deity associated with regions like Edom or Midian, was later conflated with El, the supreme god. Archaeological findings, such as inscriptions mentioning Yahweh alongside El and Asherah, the wife of El, suggest early veneration that could be interpreted as interactions with advanced beings perceived as divine. Moses' encounter with Yahweh, who revealed himself as I am who I am, could be viewed through the lens of ancient astronaut theory as an advanced being introducing itself to humanity. The liberation of the Israelites from Egypt, guided by Yahweh, might be seen as technological interventions, mirroring earlier stories of the Anunnaki teaching humans. Moreover, Abraham, believed to have been a citizen of Ur in Sumer, likely had connections with the pantheon of gods that ruled Sumerian city-states, such as Nana, also called Sin, the moon god. Christianity expanded the concept of a divine being through the figure of Jesus Christ, whose miracles, healing the sick, raising the dead, and his ascension, are central to its beliefs. These events, however, could be re-examined as demonstrations of advanced technology or knowledge imparted by extraterrestrial beings, echoing the same influence the Anunnaki had on human civilization. The integration of Greco-Roman philosophies into Christian theology further broadened the understanding of God, aligning with the narratives of Zeus Ammon, a syncretized deity who, like Amun-Ra in Egypt, merged different cultural representations of the supreme god. In Islam, Allah is described with absolute oneness and transcendence. The Quran emphasizes that Allah is beyond human comprehension, yet omnipresent and intimately close. This portrayal aligns with the idea of a being existing outside the limits of human understanding, much like the Anunnaki or Dingir, who wielded knowledge and power far beyond that of humanity. The descriptions of Allah as an entity that is closer to man than his jugular vein, while being beyond comparison, suggests the possibility of an advanced extraterrestrial influence. After all those pieces of evidence, there is no way we cannot conclude that the so-called God, who revealed himself to Abraham and is now revered by all monotheistic religions, is in fact an extraterrestrial being. The ancient texts and mythologies, when examined through the lens of modern understanding, point toward a more technological and extraterrestrial interpretation of divine interactions with humanity. Long before the concept of one singular god emerged, there were traditions that acknowledged a pantheon of gods, beginning with the belief in the Anunna gods in Sumer, later evolving to the term Anunnaki in Akkadian, and subsequently being known as Elohim in Hebrew or Neteru in Egypt. These ancient deities were not spiritual entities. They were described as an advanced race of extraterrestrials who came from the heavens to earth. Thus, the God who revealed himself to Abraham and became central to the monotheistic traditions may very well have been one of these advanced extraterrestrial beings, such as the Anunnaki, who influenced human development, creating the myths, religions, and spiritual beliefs that continue to shape our world today. Once asked about who the Anunnaki are in a conversation with Jordan Maxwell, Zecharia Sitchin made it clear: the Anunnaki are the Elohim. From my point of view, this clears up the confusion between the terms Anunnaki and Nephilim. If the Nephilim are the children of the sons of the Elohim, the so-called B'nai Elohim with the women of earth, then obviously the Anunnaki cannot be fallen angels, nor the Nephilim. They are the Elohim. So we are left with one question. Is Yahweh one of the Elohim, or is he above the Elohim? Zecharia Sitchin finds the answer to this question in the Bible. According to him, in Psalm 68 it says, Before the Elohim, upon Olam he sat, which would clearly indicate that Yahweh existed before the Elohim, or before the Anunnaki. However, Yahweh defines himself as an El, as a god, as one of the gods, claiming to be vengeful and jealous. I then ask myself, who is Yahweh? And the answer to this question seems quite clear. Yahweh is one of the extraterrestrials, a vengeful and jealous world colonizer. But then, who is God? Who created all of this? It seems that one of the Elohim left us a very clear answer. Thoth, according to some accounts, was an Atlantean who revealed to us the divine wisdom to understand who the true God is. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it for you. There are still many interesting videos coming to the channel. Subscribe so you don't miss the upcoming videos. Leave a like and your comment. See you in the next video.